Have you ever bought a bike sight unseen without having read any reviews or even seen the bike in person? Yeah, neither have I, until I bought the ENVE Melee. Now that I've had the ENVE Melee for about 2 weeks, I've logged almost 500 miles on it. I've taken it on climbs up to about 10,000 feet. I've done some pretty fast descents at questionable speeds up to about 53 miles an hour. And I've had a chance to put it through its paces and kind of figure out some of its quirks, some of its ride characteristics, and just how well this bike performs. So far, it's exceeded my expectations and continues to do so just about every single time that I ride it. If you're in the market for a new road bike, don't sleep on the Melee. I think this bike is incredible. Let's talk about why. For this build, I stripped just about every component off of my Athos, which included a full SRAM Red group set with a 50-37 chainring and a 10-33 cassette in the rear. The wheels on this are the ENVE 45 ARs with a set of 30mm Eagle F1 tubeless tires. The bars are 42mm ENVE SES AR bars with a 120mm ENVE AR stem. This also has a ceramic speed bottom bracket and a Pro Stealth carbon saddle. The total build weight is right at 17 pounds for those who are wondering. Like most bikes that you see on a phone screen or computer screen, they look much better in person, and such is the case with the ENVE Melee in the Damascus gray color. If you don't like the Damascus gray, guess what? There are no other colors, so you get Damascus gray. ENVE does offer a sticker kit that you can use to spice up the look of your Melee. As a guy who loves black, simple bikes, I think this Damascus gray in person is phenomenal. Bravo, ENVE. The styling is simple, clean, and understated, which is something that I've come to appreciate in modern road bikes, especially in an era where everyone's plastering their logo massively across the side of bikes. The only big logo that you'll find on the Melee is on the down tube tucked underneath, and it's very, very subtle. This simplicity and style is something that I really like about the Melee, and it's one of the reasons why I was attracted to the Athos. One quirk that's worth mentioning is that ENVE has printed the stack and reach of the frame on the down tube. So if you're ever in a group ride and a buddy asks you, dude, what's the stack and reach on that bike? Don't worry, ENVE's got you covered. The aero bike look is alive and well here with sleek lines and no exposed cables. Literally no exposed cables at all with this wireless drivetrain. It's pretty slick. One of my first impressions of this bike is just simply how much of a blast it is to ride. My first ride was from the town of Mammoth Lakes all the way down to Tom's Place and back up to Mosquito Flats. The Melee felt responsive, it was snappy, especially when I hopped out of the saddle and climbed. It felt really fast on the flats, on the descents, and especially on a lot of those undulating rollers that we all ride on a daily basis. The turnaround point on this particular ride tops out at just over 10,000 feet, and it's at the tail end of a 10-mile, 3,000-foot climb. So I had this incredible descent to look forward to, and it's one of my favorite descents. The road is near perfect, it's mostly straight with a few banked corners, and it's something that I feel is a really good test for a new bike. It was on this descent that I learned that the Melee was very stable at high speeds, reaching about 50 miles an hour on this particular descent. As I approached the corners towards the bottom of the descent, I also learned that the handling characteristics of this bike were superb. Corners on rails, tracks really well, and it's just so lively and playful. To my surprise, the Melee was a little bit stiffer than I had expected, and I think this stiffness contributes to its razor sharp handling, but I also noticed that when the roads got rough, the Melee bounced around just a bit. But it just took a couple of bumps for me to figure out exactly how to control it, and from then on, it was flawless. From a comfort perspective, I found this bike to be just as comfortable as any of the other high-end race bikes that I've ridden. I rode the Melee 100 miles on Saturday, and then turned around and rode it another 83 on Monday. Each ride was excellent. I felt no soreness or additional fatigue on my body because of the stiffness of the bike. I suppose if comfort was a concern, I could swap the 30mm tires for 32s or even 35s and probably get a more plush and comfortable ride. The Melee comes in at $5,500 for the frame or chassis, the bars, stem, and seat posts, which I feel is comparable to other high-end road and race bikes in the market today. The advantage or the value play here is that you get to pick the seat post, the stem, and the bars that are the right length and width for you, thus creating somewhat of a custom experience. It is worth noting that all of the cables are integrated, so you're gonna wanna get a good bike fit and make sure that your measurements are dialed before you go and commit to a certain bar width or stem length, because swapping those parts around can get expensive after the fact. After nearly 500 miles with the Melee, I can say with confidence that this is an exceptional bike. I love the stiffness and the playfulness of this bike, and I love that it doesn't come at a cost of comfort. If you're like me and you want a fast, fun, and exciting bike for smashing the pedals with your friends and entering the occasional race, I think the Melee should not be overlooked. Even as a race bike, I think the Melee is fantastic. The million-dollar question is, how does the Melee compare to the Tarmac SL7, a bike that I have nearly 9,000 miles on? Well, that's the #1 question that I was asked when it came to the Melee, and now that I've got a few miles on the Melee, I'm gonna jump back onto the Tarmac so I can do a full and proper comparison. I should have that for you next week. Until next time,